When Elon Musk strolled down a busy Los Angeles street, no one paid much attention to the billionaire entrepreneur. Just another passerby, just another face in the crowd. But when he stopped at a small art stand on the sidewalk, everything changed. Because this wasn't just any artist. Mia Carter was fighting for more than just recognition. She was painting to save her own life. And what happened next became an unforgettable moment. Because in true Elon Musk style, he didn't just buy a painting, he changed her future forever, proving that sometimes the wildest dreams really do come true. The doctor's office smelled like antiseptic and paper. The walls were too white, the air too still, like the world had momentarily held its breath. Mia Carter sat in a chair that felt too big, her fingers gripping the edge of her sweatshirt sleeves. Across from her, Dr. Myers studied the chart in front of him, his expression carefully neutral. He had probably done this 100 times before, but for Mia, this was the first, and it was about to change everything. Her mother, Rachel, sat beside her, clutching Mia's hand so tightly it almost hurt. "Mia," Dr. Myers said gently, the results came back. The pause stretched too long. "It's leukemia." The words hit like a brick to the chest. Mia barely reacted. Not at first. It was like hearing something from far away, like the voice belonged to someone else's story, not hers. But the way her mother gasped, the way her grip tightened, that made it real. Rachel's voice cracked. "How bad is it?" Dr. Myers hesitated. "The good news is we caught it early. The treatments are effective, but..." He exhaled. "It won't be easy. Chemotherapy, hospital stays, hair loss, nausea, weakness." Mia's mind raced through every worst-case scenario. But what scared her most wasn't the sickness. It was the look on her mother's face. Rachel was a fighter, a single mom who had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, who had given up her own dreams so Mia could chase hers. But now, her mother looked defeated. The bills would pile up, the treatments would drain them. Mia knew they didn't have the money for this. That night she lay awake in her tiny bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The house was silent, except for one thing, her mother crying in the next room, the sound of muffled sobs, of helplessness. Mia clenched her fists. She had spent her whole life creating art, pouring herself into every canvas, every brushstroke. If this disease was going to take everything from her, she wasn't going to sit back and let it. She had to fight back. And she only knew one way to do it. The first stroke of paint was always the hardest. Mia dipped her brush into a deep shade of blue, letting it glide across the canvas in slow, deliberate motions. This wasn't just painting anymore. This was survival. Their tiny apartment became her war zone. The kitchen table disappeared under stacks of canvases. The walls transformed into a swirling explosion of color, vivid sunsets, abstract galaxies, dreamlike landscapes. Every inch of the space smelled like paint and determination. Her body grew weaker with every passing day. The chemo made sure of that. But even on the worst nights, when the nausea kept her curled up in bed, she forced herself to keep going. Because she had no choice. The next round of treatment cost more than they had. The hospital bills were piling up, their mailbox stuffed with urgent notices and past-due warnings. Mia watched her mother work extra shifts at the diner, coming home late, eyes hollow with exhaustion. They were running out of time. She set up a small website, snapping pictures of her artwork with shaky hands, posting them online with a simple message: "Selling artwork to fund my chemo." At first, the response was nothing. No messages, no sales, just silence. Doubt crept in. Who would buy art from a sick teenager? But she refused to stop. Every morning, even when the world felt like it was crumbling around her, she painted. And she waited. Because somehow, deep down, she knew something had to change. And soon, it would, in ways she never could have imagined. The sun was already high in the sky by the time Mia and her mother arrived in downtown Los Angeles. The streets hummed with life, horns blaring, voices overlapping, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with city dust. Mia swallowed hard. This was it. No turning back now. Rachel helped her set up a small, foldable table on a sidewalk near a busy shopping district. A checkered cloth covered the surface, her paintings carefully arranged in neat rows. Bright bursts of color popped against the dull pavement. Galaxies swirled in deep blues. Golden sunsets melted into the horizon. Cityscapes pulsed with quiet energy. She propped up a handmade sign, the words written in bold, uneven letters, "Original art for sale, helping fund my chemotherapy." It felt like exposing a piece of her soul to the world. Rachel gave her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "You ready?" Mia nodded, but the truth was she had no idea. The first hour was brutal. Tourists strolled past, some glancing at her paintings, but none stopping. Businessmen in sharp suits walked by, too busy talking into their Bluetooth earpieces to even notice. A group of teenagers slowed for a second, whispering among themselves before moving on. No one bought anything. Mia's chest tightened. Down the street, other vendors seemed to be thriving. A man selling handmade jewelry had customers crowded around him. A food cart nearby had a line stretching down the sidewalk. She looked back at her paintings. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe art wasn't something people needed. The afternoon stretched on. The longer she sat there, the heavier the doubt became. Her mother stayed close, offering soft words of encouragement. But even Rachel's hopeful expression dimmed as the hours dragged by without a single sale. Mia tapped her fingers on the edge of the table, staring at the canvases. She had poured everything into this. But what if it wasn't enough? What if she wasn't enough? Mia was just about to start packing up when she heard a voice. "These are beautiful, dear." She looked up. An elderly woman stood before her, dressed in a soft blue cardigan, her silver hair pinned back in a delicate bun. She had gentle eyes, the kind that had seen decades of life and still found beauty in the world. Mia's heart leapt into her throat. The woman's fingers brushed across a canvas, a twilight cityscape painted in moody purples and glowing oranges. "How much for this one?" she asked. Mia's breath hitched. She hadn't expected anyone to actually ask that question. She scrambled for the words. $50, she stammered. For a second, she braced for rejection. It was too much. The woman would walk away. But instead, the woman reached into her purse, pulled out her wallet, and handed Mia a crisp $50 bill. "Keep painting, sweetheart," she said with a warm smile. "The world needs more of this." Mia stared at the money in her hands, disbelief crashing into relief. Her first sale, her first real victory. Rachel let out a breath of pure gratitude, squeezing Mia's hand. The woman walked away, her new painting tucked under her arm, and Mia swore she felt something shift in the air. Not long after, another person stopped, then another. A young woman bought a small abstract piece. A couple debated between two different paintings before buying both. Little by little, the trickle of sales started. It wasn't much, not nearly enough to cover what she needed for chemo, but it was something. And for the first time in a long time, Mia felt hope. She wasn't just selling paintings, she was fighting. And she wasn't done yet. The rush of excitement from her first few sales still lingered, but it didn't take long for reality to remind Mia that not everyone was kind. The first insult came from a man in a crisp designer suit, his watch gleaming under the afternoon sun. He walked past her table, then doubled back, eyeing her paintings with a bemused smirk. "Art won't pay the bills, kid." Mia blinked, gripping the edge of the table. The words sliced deeper than she expected. She wanted to fire back, to tell him that art was all she had left, but her throat locked up. He had already moved on, checking his phone like she hadn't existed at all. Then came the teenage boy. He stopped just long enough to glance at her handwritten sign. "Selling art to pay for chemotherapy." He scoffed, shaking his head. "Why don't you just start a GoFundMe?" His friends laughed, and just like that, they were gone. Mia forced herself to breathe. She knew people like them, People who thought money was only made through real jobs. People who thought art was just a hobby. But what hurt wasn't their words. It was the small voice in the back of her head whispering, "What if they're right?" Her mother squeezed her shoulder, grounding her. "Don't listen to them, sweetheart. They don't see what I see." Mia nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She wasn't doing this for their approval. She was doing it to survive. And no stranger in a suit or some smug teenager was going to take that away from her. The next day started just like the one before. Mia sitting at her stand, painting under the hot Los Angeles sun, waiting for customers who barely stopped. Then, a woman approached. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't scrolling on her phone. She actually looked at Mia's art. She had a notepad in one hand and a camera bag slung over her shoulder. "You painted all of these?" she asked. Mia hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." The woman's gaze flickered to the sign, her expression softening. "I'm Jessica Morales. I write for a local arts blog. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Mia blinked. "You want to interview me?" Jessica smiled. "I think people would want to hear your story." For the next 10 minutes, Mia answered questions about her art, her diagnosis, her fight to afford treatment. Jessica snapped photos of the paintings, of Mia sitting behind the stand, of the sign that had started it all. By the time she left, Mia wasn't sure anything would come of it. But the next morning, everything changed. Mia's phone buzzed, then again, then again. She groggily reached for it, blinking at the screen. 100+ notifications. Her stomach flipped. She clicked the first one, Jessica's article. Fighting for life, the teen artist selling her work to pay for chemotherapy. And at the bottom, thousands of shares. Mia's chest tightened. The comments poured in, strangers from all over the world leaving messages of support, some asking how they could donate, others wanting to buy a painting. Mia stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had spent so long waiting for something to change, and now, she realized, it just did. Mia could barely keep up. The morning after Jessica's article went viral, the world seemed to descend on her little art stand all at once. Orders flooded in, not just from Los Angeles, but from New York, Texas, even as far as London and Tokyo. Her email inbox was an explosion of unread messages. "Hi Mia, I'd love to buy a painting. Do you ship to Chicago? Your story moved me, sending $200. Keep painting and keep fighting. My son is battling cancer too. Your strength gives us hope. We'd love a piece of your work." Mia read each message, her chest tightening. This was what she had dreamed of, people noticing her art, buying it, believing in her. But now, it was too much. Her hands trembled as she tried to respond to emails. For every one she answered, 10 more came in. She had never felt so supported and so completely overwhelmed. Even the art stand had changed. What was once a lonely spot on the sidewalk had become a small gathering place. Some people stopped just to donate, slipping bills into a jar without saying a word. Others waited patiently, flipping through her paintings, chatting about which ones spoke to them the most. And then, something Mia never expected. A local gallery reached out. "Your work is special," the gallery owner had said over the phone. "We'd love to feature you in an upcoming exhibit." Mia almost dropped the phone. A gallery? A real one? Rachel nearly cried with joy when she heard the news, but Mia hesitated. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to see her paintings hanging on pristine white walls, to have people admire them in the way she had always dreamed. But the truth was, she was exhausted. The chemo treatments had drained her. Even sitting at her art stand for a few hours was a struggle. The reality of her fragile body clashed with the momentum of her growing success. And despite all the sales, despite all the donations, the medical bills were still looming, still too high. She wasn't out of the woods yet, not even close. It was late afternoon and the California sun cast long shadows over the sidewalk. The buzz of the city was familiar now, honking cars, distant chatter, the rhythmic steps of hurried pedestrians. Mia was exhausted. She had barely eaten that day, her hands aching from painting non-stop, but she pushed through. Because she had to, that's when she noticed him. A man in a hoodie and sunglasses, standing just a few feet away. Unlike the other passers-by, he wasn't rushing. He wasn't glancing at his phone or talking to someone. He just stood there, watching her paintings. Mia sat up a little straighter. People stopped all the time, but something about him felt different. She couldn't explain it, just an energy, a presence. Finally, he stepped forward. He didn't pick up a painting, didn't ask about prices. Instead, he just studied them carefully, as if he were memorizing every brushstroke. Mia's throat felt dry. See anything you like?" The man's head tilted slightly, a small smirk formed on his lips. "These are incredible," he said. His voice was calm, measured, yet carried undeniable authority. Mia blinked. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. But before she could figure it out, he reached for one of her paintings, and in that moment, Mia had no idea. Her life was about to change forever. The man stood still for a moment, his hand resting lightly on the edge of Mia's painting. The low hum of the city surrounded them, the distant roar of traffic, the murmur of pedestrians, the faint melody of a street musician playing somewhere nearby. Then, he reached up and removed his sunglasses. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She knew that face. Sharp features, a slightly unshaven jawline, tousled hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it a few too many times. Her brain refused to process it at first, but the gasps around her stand confirmed what she was already realizing. "Elon Musk?" someone in the growing crowd whispered. A ripple of shock spread through the street. People turned, stared, grabbed their phones. A few pedestrians had already stopped mid-step, their eyes widening in disbelief. Mia's heart pounded. Elon Musk, the billionaire, the tech genius, the man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and a dozen other world-changing companies, was standing at her tiny art stand, flipping through her paintings like any other customer. Her fingers clenched the fabric of her jeans beneath the table. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But it was. Elon, seemingly unfazed by the growing crowd, glanced at Mia, his expression unreadable. "I assume you painted all of these yourself?" Mia swallowed hard. Somehow, she found her voice. "Yeah," she stammered, "every single one." Elon nodded, his eyes flickering with something. Interest? Amusement? Curiosity? She couldn't tell. The whispers turned into murmurs. The murmurs turned into a frenzy. Phones shot up in every direction, people whispering frantically into their screens. "Oh my God, it's really him. What is he doing here? Is he buying a painting?" Mia sat frozen, her hands gripping the edges of the table to steady herself. And then, as if none of this was out of the ordinary, Elon Musk reached for a painting. Elon lifted a particular canvas from the display, one of Mia's favorites. A night sky filled with rockets, painted in deep blues and purples, tiny bursts of gold speckled across the canvas like distant galaxies. Mia had spent weeks perfecting this one. It wasn't just a painting, it was a dream, a vision of a future where humanity reached the stars. Elon studied it for a moment, tilting it slightly in the light. Then he looked at Mia. "How much for this one?" Mia felt her pulse slam against her ribs. The words barely registered. She could barely breathe, let alone think. Elon Musk had just asked for a price on her painting. She opened her mouth, but her brain refused to function. It took a solid 3 seconds before she managed to croak out, $200? The number felt ridiculous now, stupid even. Elon Musk could buy a whole building and not blink. But he didn't laugh, he didn't hesitate. Instead, he smirked slightly, just enough for Mia to notice, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. A checkbook. Mia blinked, struggling to process what was happening. Who even used checks anymore? Elon uncapped a sleek black pen and began writing something down. The crowd leaned in, people whispering, cameras rolling. Then he tore the check from the book and handed it to Mia. She took it, her fingers trembling as she slowly unfolded the slip of paper. Her vision blurred at the edges as her eyes locked onto the number. Not $200, not $2,000, $100,000. Mia's breath hitched, her vision tilted, her entire world just shifted. The crowd erupted into chaos. Mia just stared at the check in disbelief. Her hands shook, her heart thundered. "This," she whispered, "this can't be real." Elon simply shrugged, slipping the painting under his arm. "It's not charity," he said. "It's a damn good painting." Mia felt her knees go weak. Her entire life had just changed in an instant. And the craziest part? This was only the beginning. Mia couldn't move. Her hands trembled as she stared down at the check, the impossibly large number staring back at her. $100,000. She blinked hard, convinced she was seeing things. Maybe the chemo was messing with her vision. Maybe this was some kind of stress-induced hallucination. But the weight of the paper in her hands was real. The crowd around her exploded. "Holy, did he just—" "No way, that's $100,000. Elon Musk just bought her painting for $100,000? The excitement spread like wildfire. People grabbed their phones, some filming, others frantically texting. Mia's mother Rachel rushed to her side, eyes wide with shock. "Mia, is this—" Mia turned the check toward her, her fingers shaking too much to speak. Rachel gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. The disbelief, the sheer unrealness of the moment had Mia's chest tightening. She tried to say something, anything, but instead, her emotions hit all at once. Tears blurred her vision. She sucked in a shaky breath, then another, but it was no use. She broke. A sob slipped out, then another. Before she knew it, she was full-on crying. Not the quiet, graceful kind of crying. The uncontrollable, ugly kind. The kind that happens when months of stress, fear, and hopelessness finally crack open all at once. Elon, still standing there, watched her carefully, his expression softer now. "This isn't charity," he repeated, his voice steady but kind. "It's a damn good painting." Mia let out a half laugh, half sob, shaking her head in disbelief. How was this her life right now? A day ago, she was sitting here wondering if she could even make it through another round of treatment. And now? Now, Elon freaking Musk was standing at her art stand, casually holding one of her paintings like he hadn't just changed her entire world. The sheer insanity of it all was too much. The next round of chemo, covered, the mountain of medical bills, handled, the fear of drowning in debt, gone, and all because she refused to stop painting. Rachel wrapped her in a tight hug, her own tears falling freely. Mia held on to her mother like an anchor, her fingers still clenched around the check as if letting go would make it disappear. She had no idea what happened next, but she knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The internet exploded. Within minutes, Mia's world transformed from a quiet street corner in Los Angeles to the center of a viral sensation. Elon Musk art trend started trending on Twitter. Videos of the moment spread like wildfire. Clips of Elon standing at her booth, of him handing over the check, of Mia breaking down in tears. The headlines came fast and relentless. Elon Musk buys teen's painting for $100,000, and you won't believe why. Billionaire supports young artist fighting cancer in the most unbelievable way. This teen story will restore your faith in humanity. Mia's phone blew up. Her notifications wouldn't stop buzzing. Hundreds, then thousands of messages flooded in. Her Instagram DMs overflowing. Her email completely crashed. Her tiny art website so overwhelmed it shut down. But the craziest part? People weren't just talking. They were buying. Within hours, complete strangers from New York to Tokyo to Paris were clamoring to own her work. "Hi, Mia. I'd love to buy a piece. Do you ship to Australia?" "Your story is incredible. Can I commission a custom painting?" "My daughter is also battling cancer. Your strength inspires us. We want to support you however we can." And then, the big names started rolling in. A-list actors, business moguls, and influencers shared her story, offering to buy paintings, commission new pieces, and donate to her medical fund. A well-known tech CEO tweeted, "Mia Carter's art is proof that resilience is its own kind of genius. Buying a painting now, you should too." A Grammy-winning musician wrote, "I just bought one of Mia's paintings and I'm framing it in my studio. Keep fighting, girl." But the moment that truly stopped Mia in her tracks? An email from a wealthy donor. It was one sentence long. "How much is left on your medical bills? I'll pay them off." Mia dropped her phone. Rachel, who had been scrolling through the endless messages with her, snatched it up and read the email aloud. Her voice shook. The entire world had wrapped itself around Mia's story. People weren't just supporting her, they were lifting her up in ways she never imagined. She had started this journey alone, sitting at a street corner, hoping someone, anyone, would care. Now she had an army of strangers rallying behind her. And the best part? This was only the beginning. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of the monitor. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, the fluorescent lights humming softly above. Mia sat in the reclining chair staring at the IV drip that had been her constant companion for months. But this time was different. This time was the last time. The final round of chemotherapy, paid in full. She could hardly believe it. Her body was weak, her muscles still aching from the grueling treatments, but she had won. Rachel sat beside her, holding her hand, her eyes shimmering with relief. "It's over, sweetheart." Mia exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of a battle that had consumed her life finally start to lift. And then, a buzz from her phone. She grabbed it with shaky fingers and squinted at the email notification on the screen. Subject, keep painting. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She clicked on it. It was from Elon Musk. "Mia, the world needs artists like you. Never stop painting. Never stop dreaming." Elon. Her vision blurred with tears. Of all the messages she had received, of all the incredible, life-changing moments this past year, this one hit differently. Because Elon Musk wasn't just some billionaire who had bought her art. He had seen her. Not as a charity case, not as a girl who was struggling, as an artist. And she wasn't going to waste this chance. That night, even though exhaustion pressed against her bones, Mia picked up a paintbrush. And as the first stroke of color spread across the canvas, a new idea took shape in her mind. She wasn't just going to paint for herself anymore. She was going to give other young artists like her a chance to be seen too. 1 month later, the Carter Foundation for Young Artists Battling Illness was officially launched. With the overwhelming support from her viral story, Mia used a portion of the donations and painting sales to fund art programs for kids going through medical treatments. She partnered with hospitals, setting up small painting stations for children who were too sick to leave their rooms. She worked with schools, offering art scholarships to young artists who, like her, just needed a chance. She even hosted free art workshops, giving kids a place to create, to express, to escape, just like painting had done for her. The media loved it. But that wasn't what mattered to Mia. What mattered was the little girl in the hospital bed, gripping a paintbrush with fragile fingers. What mattered was the teenager staring at a blank canvas, wondering if they could turn their pain into something beautiful. Because if Mia had learned one thing in this crazy, impossible, miraculous journey, art could save lives. 1 year later, the gallery smelled of fresh paint and polished wood. Warm light poured from the ceiling, illuminating the walls covered in Mia's work. Her first solo exhibition. Mia stood in the center of the room, completely in awe. Just a year ago, she had been selling paintings on a street corner, praying for a miracle. Now, she was the artist people were coming to see. The walls were lined with her signature style, bold colors, deep emotions, galaxies and cityscapes, life and dreams colliding on canvas. Guests wandered through the space whispering in admiration. Reporters snapped photos, critics took notes, and then the empty frame, a single blank space on the wall. A small plaque beneath it read, "This painting belongs to Elon Musk's private collection." The night sky painting, the one that had changed everything. Mia felt a smile stretch across her lips. She still couldn't believe it. She turned as a hush fell over the room. The gallery curator stepped forward, a microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the incredible young woman behind these masterpieces, Mia Carter." Applause erupted. Mia swallowed hard. Her hands were trembling, but this time it wasn't from fear. She stepped forward, taking the mic, and for a brief moment she just took it all in. The faces staring back at her, the art that surrounded her, the life that had once felt so impossible, now unfolding before her. She cleared her throat, then spoke from the heart. "A year ago I was just a girl on the street trying to survive." She paused, scanning the room, seeing just how far she had come. "Now, because of kindness, because of generosity, because of people who believed in me when I had nothing left, I have a future." She took a breath, then smiled. "And this is only the beginning." The crowd erupted in cheers. Mia looked up at the empty frame one last time, imagining it hanging somewhere in Elon Musk's home, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could change a life forever. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Mia had been in the middle of sketching, a half-finished cityscape spread across her desk, when her mother walked in holding a small envelope. "There's mail for you," Rachel said, her voice laced with curiosity. Mia frowned, wiping her paint-streaked hands on her jeans. Most of her mail now consisted of gallery invites, art commissions, or letters from kids inspired by her story. But when she took the envelope from her mother, her breath caught in her throat. It was thick, high-quality paper, the kind that felt expensive before you even opened it. And there, written in clean, sharp handwriting on the front, was her name, Mia Carter. No return address, just one name in the corner, Elon Musk. Mia's pulse spiked. Rachel gasped, "Oh my God." Mia stared at the envelope for a long moment, her hands suddenly sweaty, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. After everything, the street stand, the check, the viral story, the gallery, what could he possibly have to say to her now? Her fingers trembled as she peeled open the envelope and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. She unfolded it slowly, and there, in bold, unmistakable handwriting, was a message so simple, yet so powerful, it sent a shiver down her spine. Mia never stopped creating. Elon, that was it. 5 words, but 5 words that meant everything. Mia swallowed the lump in her throat. She ran her fingers over the ink as if trying to memorize the way the letters curved, the way the message felt pressed into the page. It wasn't just encouragement, it was a challenge, a reminder, a promise. Her art had saved her life, and now it was her mission to do the same for others. Mia wiped a stray tear from her cheek, then stood up and walked straight to the studio wall. With careful hands, she placed the letter in a simple black frame and hung it where she could see it every single day. Right above her easel, right where it belonged, and as she stepped back to admire it, a slow, knowing smile spread across her lips. Because she knew, without a doubt. The wildest dreams don't just come true. They begin with a single brushstroke. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even crazier.